The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight, it's our annual music show, where we speak to three artists doing what they love most. First up, the new head of the Royal Conservatory of Music, Alexander Brose. Then we meet 16-year-old singer Ellie Maxwell from Manitoulin Island with an amazing voice and an even more amazing origin story. And finally, a guy who mixes country, rock and roll, and New Orleans. Devin Cuddy will perform and discuss his latest album, Dear Jane. That's all ahead on The Agenda. How many people watching or listening to this program right now took lessons at the Royal Conservatory of Music when they were kids? I'm betting a lot. I know I did. Well, the conservatory, headquartered in the provincial capital, has a new boss. Alexander Brose has worked all over the world, and now we're going to find out what he's got up his sleeve for Canada's foremost music education institution. It's great to meet you. Great to have you here.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to start talking a bit about your background so we can find out a little more about you. You were the executive director of something called the Tianjin Juilliard School in China, I guess an overseas campus affiliated with the Juilliard School in New York. What did that job involve?
Oh my gosh. The Juilliard School in around 2009 decided that it wanted to start researching how it could expand its place. Obviously, very famous campus in New York City. Many of its students were coming from all over the world, but it wanted to look into going outside of New York campus and choose a place that it felt it had the most potential to really develop the lives of young musicians going forward. China was an obvious choice. Tianjin was not. It is a very fantastic city. It's always been Beijing's protectorate, Beijing's moat. But doesn't have the kind of cultural recognition that a Beijing or a Shanghai would be or have. And so negotiations with the city government resulted in the creation of the Tianjin Juilliard School starting in 2017. I moved there with my wife and two kids as one of the first of four people on the ground and began to create an entire team, build a beautiful building, hire an entire faculty, and try to launch it in the middle of COVID, which was an adventure to say the least.
That was my next question. You spent 5 years there?
Yes, give or take, with a lot of travel back and forth during COVID.
But your family was not there the whole time.
Well, the story is that we went on vacation during the Lunar New Year of 2020 to Cambodia to go see Angkor Wat, and while we were there, Wuhan shut down. We just squeaked into Singapore by the skin of our teeth. Didn't know what to do. The school, my kids' school in China was shut down for the entire rest of the year by February 1st, going remote. So we decided to come back to North America, to the United States at the time. And my wife and kids have not been back to Asia since. So it was quite the experience going back and forth during COVID, getting the project up and running. And it's actually, by all accounts, doing quite well to this day. So,
can I ask you a little geopolitical question emerging from that?
Sure.
Which is, how much do you think, given your experience in China, we have to fear China as a looming adversary?
Oh, wow. You know, that's a hard question to answer. But I do know that projects like the Tianjin Juilliard School, cultural bridges, people-to-people exchange is going to be of the utmost importance as we move forward geopolitically between the U.S. and China, between Canada and China. It's a marvelous example of bringing people together, so I hope it continues to succeed in that way.
Let's keep going back. The Aspen Music Festival and School in Colorado. That was right. Another point on your destination. What'd you do for them?
There I was fundraising. I was working with the board, working with a terrific faculty, working with hundreds of students a year, visiting artists, really developing the next generation of classical artists, working with some of the world's most generous philanthropists who wanted to support a very important American summer music festival that has just one of the best reputations of being the place where everyone goes, either as a student, as a faculty member, as a performer. It was living in paradise for sure, and it was a great 5 years for me and my family.
The San Francisco Conservatory of Music.
Yeah.
What'd you do there?
There, I was director of admissions, which is something that was offered to me at the young age of 24 years old. And there it was really phenomenal to be able to learn the canon. I'm a singer, and so I spent my childhood singing, not only abroad but also in the United States, and knew the vocal repertoire, but upon arrival to the San Francisco Conservatory was asked to go across the U.S. and abroad to audition students, playing pieces that I wasn't too familiar with. So there are some stories of me cutting really young, incredible violinists off right before the cadenza in an audition and things like that. So it was an incredible opportunity for me to learn the pieces that make the canon tick. Marvelous to work with faculty there, many of whom were members of the San Francisco Symphony, and just understanding really what the power of music education has in the society.
Where are you actually born?
I was born in Manhattan and grew up outside of New York until I was 7, at which point we moved to South Korea in 1983, which was a really interesting time to be living in South Korea.
What took you there?
My dad wanted something different for the family.
That's different.
It was different, yeah, 1983 for sure. He was a banker working for a major U.S. bank, and many of his friends were going abroad to Europe. They were going to Frankfurt, Paris, London. He wanted something else, and so off we went. 2 weeks after Korean Air Flight 007 was shot out of the sky by a Russian MiG, we moved to Seoul. 2 weeks later after that, the then military president Chun Doo-hwan's cabinet was blown up by a North Korean operative in Rangoon. I wore dog tags to school most days. There was tear gas coming in through the windows from demonstrations at Yonsei University, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was an incredible experience to grow up in that environment. To do the travel that I did growing up, I feel very lucky to have been able to have that.
Did your parents not have any second thoughts about the wisdom of moving into a war zone just at that moment?
I think it's safe to say that my mother was apoplectic,
Yeah.
but no, it was really, it was a very interesting time for Korea, for sure. It was a very interesting time formative for me at the age of 7. And in fact, it was there that I really started to sing for an organization much like TVO called KEDI, the Korean Educational Development Institute. And I was on TV. I was singing more or less like a Sesame Street to teach Korean kids how to speak English. Going on set every week and singing educational songs about jumping and skipping and hopping. It was a great introduction to the arts, for sure.
I'm so tempted to ask you to do a few bars on
Not
this
now,
right
no,
now.
no.
No, okay. Well, here's the key question. What nationality is your wife and 2 children?
Oh, man. The best thing I've ever done was marry a Canadian. Yeah, my wife grew up in BC, born to 2 Chilean immigrants in the mid-70s. My kids have dual citizenship, U.S. and Canadian, and we're just feel very lucky to be in Canada and very lucky to have the opportunity to raise our boys in Toronto.
Suffice to say, that's why you wanted the job at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto?
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
100%.
you have that built-in advantage, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, do you take out citizenship at some point? Is that something?
Oh, yeah, oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
You will?
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah.
You will?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You, I don't have to tell you, have taken on a rather mammoth task. This is a big organization. This is an organization that's been led by the same guy for the last 33 years, and Peter Simon. How do you do that smoothly?
Well, I think unique to transitions, Peter and I overlapped for an entire year leading up to this September. And it was something that was, the very second the search firm called me to ask if I was interested in this position, it was the first thing that they mentioned. By the way, if this all works out for you, you will be overlapping with the outgoing president, Peter Simon, for an entire year. Are you okay with that? And I said, well, sure. I mean, I'll have to do what I have to do. It was, I think, by all accounts, certainly mine, a huge success. Peter is, I mean, just an inspiring, inspirational, entrepreneurial monster. I mean, the guy created everything that the Royal Conservatory means to this day. The building, the board, the faculty, his fingerprints are on everything. And so to be able to have that year, to see what he's created, but also to listen. It's a unique and I think kind of a luxurious position to be there but not really be in the driver's seat for a year. And
I'm told you had 185 individual conversations with employees there.
I did, yeah, and it was something that I used Similarly, in China, it was different. I was building something from the ground up. So whenever someone came in for their first day or first week, regardless of their position, I asked them to come into my office for 15, 20 minutes, just so that I could hear from them about why they decided to work at the Tianjin Juilliard School, but also for me to be able to tell them about the mission of the organization, why it's important for geopolitical relationships, music and society, etc. And it was so incredibly rewarding for me to have that moment. I wanted to try and recreate that when I could. And so having those conversations were so important, because what it did for me is it allowed me to hear what people's connection to the Royal Conservatory of Music truly is. As a Canadian growing up in this country, as you did, everyone has almost a Royal Conservatory of Music memory or experience. And it was so inspiring to hear that from everyone. I mean, they may be working or have been working for the school for 10 years, 53 years, but their relationship with the school goes back even further than that. So themes began to emerge, stories began to emerge. It all resulted in a wonderful town hall this past fall where we honored those who have been serving at the Royal Conservatory of Music, working there for 10 years or over. It was over 125 people, including 5 piano teachers who've been there for 50 years, and Vera Tchaikovsky, who's been there for 53. And to see her walk across the stage and the recognition that she received from that was just, it was palpable, the energy in the room. It was wonderful. So that legacy that the Royal Conservatory of Music has is something that I think is very unique to the organization and very unique to Canada, for sure.
You've got that legacy, but of course every new person wants to do their own thing. So what is that going to be for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's so much of what has been put in motion over the past 33 years needs to be capitalized upon, right? I think that there are so many incredible things happening at the organization. It is, in essence, a 5-headed dragon, right? Very unique to any music school on earth, with the 3 schools, the 3 campuses on our campus, the Glenn Gould School, the Taylor Academy, the Oscar Peterson School of Music, Kerner Hall, which is arguably the best concert hall in North America, if not the world, acoustically. And then our learning systems, right? So our certificate program, our publishing, our exams, our early childhood program, which is, I think, about to be a major player in the early childhood space. All of this looks at a brand. All of this refers and reflects on the brand of the Royal Conservatory of Music. And it's my hope, it's my goal, that over the next 3 to 5, 10 years, when someone hears any of those things that I've just mentioned, they automatically know that that is the Royal Conservatory of Music. Or when they buy a piano book in Vancouver or Yellowknife, that they know that there is a campus with an incredible hall that they can come and visit in Toronto. It's a mammoth task because it is a very large organization, 250,000 students throughout Canada, 10,000 teachers teaching the Royal Conservatory of Music curriculum. How do we unify all of that? How do we make it known that that is really a part of one large community and keep them connected with the mothership here in Toronto? It's a huge task, but I'm ready for it.
I know you didn't want to sing in Korean for us here, but through our little mischievous ways, we've seen you sing. We're going to see you sing. Sheldon, if you would, roll the clip.
That certain night, the night we met, there was magic abroad in the air. There were angels dining at the Ritz, and a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square.
Where did you learn how to sing that well? Most administrators or executives I know can't sing like that.
Oh boy, you'd be surprised, but I
Yes, I would.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to watch myself perform. I think, it's all about teacher, right? I mean, I think in the community that the Royal Conservatory finds itself in, it's all about supporting the teacher. I was so lucky over the course of my training to have just remarkable teachers.
You started, I assume, as a kid in New York?
As a kid, yeah, in New York, yeah, really in New Jersey, singing with a terrific teacher named Margaret Leary, who's since passed. My public high school in New Jersey did about 9 productions a year, including 3 musicals. unbelievable, very unique. And it, again, it's that relationship that you have with your teacher and their ability to pull out talent from you that I think is so instrumental, no pun intended, to artist expression, creativity, connection, etc. And to be at a school like the Royal Conservatory of Music that associates itself with so many talented teachers, it's wonderful to see that happening on a daily basis. I just feel so lucky that I had that experience with the teachers that I had.
I'm told you love that song in particular.
It's a great song.
What is it about that song you love?
Oh, man. I sang it in college with with an a cappella group at Cornell, and I was in love with the melody. I mean, I just think the melody in and of itself is so terrific. It's a beautiful image of, I don't know, of love, of loss, of connection. And it sits well in my voice. I don't know, I love that song so much.
What was the name of the a cappella group?
The Hangovers.
And it was called that because?
Because it was actually started in 1963-64 by a number of Cornell engineers who were hanging over for a fifth year to get their masters from their undergraduates. So that's the story. And
Nothing to do with alcohol?
No, I'll stick to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. I don't mean to get too serious with you here, but the reality is music education in the public school system across this province and country, I think, is probably nothing like what it was when you and I were going to school, and I was going to school well before you were going to school.
Absolutely.
So I presume that puts more pressure on you to really get out there and spread the word about what the conservatory can do, because kids are not going to accidentally bump into music in school today the way they did when we were
Absolutely
younger.
right. Mm-hmm.
So what do you do about that?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I mean, it is a huge topic. We talk about it, I think, almost daily at the institution, certainly at the board level, staff level, teacher level. How do we make music education relevant? Certainly. How do we make it more appreciated? We have to be true believers in the power of music to create future leaders and to create a real civil society, in my opinion. So for me and for the institution, we have developed a program that is steeped in neuroscience and steeped in music. It's been in our building for 10 years, and it's something that we see as being an absolutely rewarding opportunity for young children and their parents and care providers to really introduce music at a very early age, to open up those neural pathways so that students who study music at that age have better performance in literacy, numeracy, problem solving, language learning, you name it.
And how do you make sure they can afford it?
Well, that's huge, and we are a not-for-profit, right? So we are developing these programs with the hope that we can bring them into communities, music schools, but also early childhood centers throughout Canada at an affordable cost, so that music is a part of people's lives from the very first steps. And when that happens, we build future audience goers, we build future instrumentalists and singers, and we build, hopefully, an even more stronger society that is focused on music as a way to communicate and to connect. I have to just give you a bit of a story as it relates to the Royal Conservatory. I was working in San Francisco as an admissions director, and we were at the time recruiting a number of students from Canada who were coming in to study either as bachelor's students or master's students. And at one point, they were taking their placement exams, and I got a knock on my door from the music theory professor and the music history professor who wanted to know what was going on in Canada, that all of the Canadian students who were coming into this very, very revered Conservatory of Music in San Francisco, all of the Canadian students were passing out of every single placement exam in theory and in history. And it was the Royal Conservatory of Music's programs that they were taking in high school that got them there. And this society, this Canadian society, has been so, I think, benefited from what the Royal Conservatory of Music offers. It is a very musical country, thanks to this very national institution. So I just think it's a remarkable opportunity for us to bring more music to more people at an earlier age.
Alex, we wish you well with your new mission.
Thank you, Steve.
Good luck. That's Alexander Brose, the new president and CEO, Royal Conservatory of Music. Thanks.
Thank you.
One day this past summer, I was attending a weekly farmers market in Kagawong on Manitoulin Island when, in the distance, I heard a voice singing. I couldn't see who the voice belonged to, but it sure sounded like Ella Fitzgerald. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that voice belonged to Ellie Maxwell, a 16-year-old originally from South Africa, now living on Manitoulin Island. I thought to myself, more people have got to hear this kid sing. So here she is, Ellie Maxwell, along with her mother, Mary Mendez de Franca, and it's so good to have both of you here in our studio.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's so good to see you again. I'm going to start with your mom, okay? Because I want to get some of the background. When did Ellie come into your life?
Ellie came into our lives in 2008. And it was at the end of what seemed like a very long adoption process. My husband and I at that point had 4 biological children, but I had retired from my nursing job, and we'd been hearing a lot about the need for adoptive parents and hadn't really realized until then how many abandoned babies there are all over the world, not just Africa. But we started looking into it very seriously and chose South Africa as our country to adopt from. And we had 3 boys and 1 girl at the time, and they were all very excited about the idea. But our daughter did say that if we adopted a boy and gave her another brother, she would run away. So we knew it had to be a little girl. So that was the start of the process, and 2 years later, 2 years of paperwork and having a social worker come to our home, interviewing us, police checks. It is a long process. But finally the day came when a picture was sent to us, and it was a picture of Ellie, baby Ellie.
And she was how old?
And she was just a few months old at that point. And we were told the little bit that was known about her. And that is that she had been found abandoned in a small town in South Africa.
So you don't know who her birth parents are?
We have no idea. She was found abandoned outside an auto repair shop. They took her in, and advertisements were put in the local papers to see if any of the parents or biological family would turn up. Nobody did. So she went into an orphanage at that time. And she seemed to be a perfect match for our family. We had submitted a whole family study with pictures and everything like that. So once we got that picture, we had very little time to say yay or nay. And of course, we said yay.
And did you actually go to South Africa to pick her up?
Yes, we had to go. Actually, the adoption had to be finalized in the courts in South Africa. So we just made the necessary arrangements for care for our other children, and we got on a plane, and we were very soon changing diapers and feeding milk bottles again. Yes.
Ellie, how much do you either want to know or need to know about your life before you got adopted?
I think I really wanted to know when I was younger, and then I didn't want to know anymore because I had such a wonderful family and they loved me so much that it didn't matter what necessarily my biological family looked like because my family loves me so much.
So you're not tormented at the knowledge of what came before?
I was for a very long time. I really wanted to know. I mean, for a long time I was like, do I look like my biological mother? That's something that really I struggled with for a while. But then my mom's perfect for me. So, yeah, it doesn't trouble me anymore.
How do you like living on Manitoulin Island?
It's so much fun, honestly. I mean, the winters are quite cold.
It only goes down to about minus 30 or 40 there, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I love Manitoulin. The people there are so kind, and yeah.
Let me ask you the obvious question, which is, wherever you go on Manitoulin Island, there is almost a 99.9% chance that you're going to be the only black face where you go.
Yes.
How do you deal with that?
It also I used to struggle with that as a kid because I was like, nobody looks like me. And it's a really funny story because my mom was driving me to, I forget, it was a kids club or something like that. And I asked my mom, when am I going to turn white? And so, my mom's kind of driving. She's like, oh, how do you deal with that question? But yeah, it doesn't trouble me as much as it used to. But
It used to be.
Yeah, it used to
once
trouble me
bothered you.
quite a bit because
Yeah.
I would, you look anywhere and there's nobody who looks like you. And, at the time, television didn't necessarily have a lot of black people. So you kind of feel isolated. But now I'm older and it's better.
Mary, I presume, you must have thought at some point, we're about to bring a black child onto Manitoulin Island, which is 99.99% white. How's that all going to work itself out?
Absolutely. And we were working with a wonderful adoption agency here in Toronto. And the question almost made us abandon the quest until I had a conversation with the man who led this adoption agency. And I was voicing all my concerns. And he said, Mary, are you and your husband going to love this baby? And I said, absolutely. We're going to love her to the moon and back and even more. So he said, that's all you need to know. You love her and the rest will fall into place. And so it has.
When did you discover that she could sing?
Very early on. I think as soon as she had a voice, like as soon as she started speaking, she started singing. And one of our older boys, who is also musical, said, oh my goodness, Mom, she just sings absolutely on key and she has perfect pitch. So he noticed it. I'm not musical, so.
So how do you find a music teacher on Manitoulin Island?
Not easily.
Right.
Not easily. But again, there we were fortunate. We found a retired music teacher who, although he had retired, he was willing to take Ellie on. He heard her sing. And so that's how her lessons started when she was about 8 years old.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long after he started teaching her that he said, she needs more than I can give her. And at the same time, the COVID years started. And fortunately for us, we found a wonderful singing coach in the States, whom to this day we have never met in person.
Oh, so you do it all on Zoom?
Yes.
You get lessons on Zoom?
Yes.
And what, he or she?
Charmaine.
Charmaine. What does Charmaine put you through in terms of trying to get you to be better?
Vocal warm-ups, stretching my range. Right now, I struggle with mixed range, which is between the chest voice and the head voice. And so it's a little bit of a rocky thing when you're trying to transition. So we're working on that right now, and we've been working on that. So.
When I heard you sing at the farmer's market, you were not singing Taylor Swift or any new stuff. You were singing stuff from the Great American Songbook, like the stuff that we grew up with. It's not really... I was going to say, it's not your music, it's more our music, but even then, it's not even our music. This stuff goes back 100 years.
Yes.
How do you know all that stuff?
Well, it's because of my dad. Because every evening after supper, he'd lie down and he'd play jazz, and I'd sing along with it or I'd dance with it. And so I knew all these songs. And then once I finally got my first iPod, I got all of his songs downloaded onto it. So that's all I listened to.
And who are your favorite singers?
Ella Fitzgerald.
You do love Ella.
I love Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston, Barbara Streisand.
Those are great choices.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure here, we want to hear you sing, but unfortunately we can't have you sing Ella Fitzgerald because the cost of clearing the rights to have you sing that would be astronomical. So, the good news is you're going to sing something that you wrote yourself, right? Tell us about the inspiration for the song you're about to do.
So it all started with my story and coming to terms with I was abandoned. And that's a difficult thing for a child to understand and to be like, why was I abandoned? Why wasn't I good enough to keep? And so I struggled really with communicating my feelings. So my aunt wrote this beautiful poem. And when I read it, I felt so connected with it because I can't always voice my feelings that well, not through music, because music is how I express my feelings often. And so when I read this poem, I thought, I can really do something with this. So we contacted a producer, Britton Cameron, who I'd worked with previously on an other original song, Better Days. I was like, can we please work on this? I'd love to do this. So we worked with the producer, Britton Cameron, and my aunt, Auntie Deb, and me. And so, I tweaked it, to what I feel like, but it all came from a beautiful poem that
And
my
the name of the
auntie-
song is?
Lucky.
Which you are, aren't you?
Yes.
You are lucky. Okay, I'm going to take this microphone. I'm going to move it where X marks the spot. And we can't wait to hear you sing.
Thank you.
Okay, Ellie Maxwell, it's over to you.
While the land where I was born to me is unknown, far, far away, some distant time zone. The faces of the ones who made me remain erased, and the lines that tie me cannot be traced. No, I don't know the ones I left behind, nor if someday I'll pass will be alive. But I know I'm lucky, Lord knows I'm lucky, and it sure feels good to be lucky. Lord knows I'm lucky, saved by a five-letter word. My sweet Mother Mary, so full of grace, I feel safe and grounded, wrapped in her embrace. There ain't nothing that my papa can teach me to do, and that's a place where I'll run when my heart feels blue. With all I had was left behind to leave, so I'm gonna give back more than I receive. But I know I'm lucky, Lord knows I'm lucky, and it sure feels good to be lucky. Lord knows I'm lucky, saved by a five-letter word. The moon and the stars, they stop and they stand. I know it's crazy, but sometimes my gift is a burden I bear, the crown that I wear, 'cause I'm lucky, Lord knows I'm lucky, and it sure feels good to be lucky. Lord knows I'm lucky, saved by a five-letter word. Feel lucky, yes I am. Oh yeah, I'm feeling lucky. Thank you, Lord, saved by a five-letter word.
Oh my goodness, Ellie, you're so amazing. I'm getting all verklempt just listening to that song. How about that? I'm going to move this microphone back. When you hear your daughter and what she can do and mention you in that song the way she did, go ahead. What's in your head?
Oh, I tear up, and I've heard it so many times already, and to this day I still tear up, and it makes all the hard parts of adoption, all the fears that we had prior to bringing her home. It just puts it all into a beautiful perspective, and it makes it all so worthwhile.
Young lady, you have a gift. You know this, right? You have a gift. What do you want to do with this gift?
I mean, whenever I perform, I try to look out in the audience and see who's listening to me. And when I look out and I see people being touched and feeling emotion, I want to give people that emotional response. I want to bring joy to people. And so I love to sing, not only just because it brings me joy, but other people. And so.
But do I infer that you want a career as a singer, as a professional singer?
I do want a
You
career.
do. You want
Yes.
that. Do you know how to make that happen?
I do. I'm working on it.
Well, do share, because it's, obviously this is something that a lot of people want, and not easy to make happen. So Where's the golden road that you go on to make it happen?
Well, practice every day. That's a big thing. Practice every day. Honestly, listen to inspirational things. Because sometimes, you know, I didn't pass an audition. So I was like, oh, that's awful. I didn't pass it. And then I start to question myself. But whenever I listen to my parents, I'm like, no, Ellie, you're good at singing. You can do it. And so my mom and my dad are such inspirations for me, just to push me into making that golden path.
You know, at some point she's going to come to you and say, Mom, I got to go to Juilliard in New York or something like that. And that's only probably $85,000 US a year. So what's going to happen when that request comes down the line?
Well, we would do our very best to make it happen. And in fact, I'm not going to mention any names, but there is a wonderful older man on Manitoulin Island. He's a retired businessman. And he is into all the jazzy music from the past and has heard Ellie sing. And he has been so touched that just out of the blue, he has sent us money. He said, I just want to make sure that she keeps getting the lessons that she needs to have. So here you go.
I bet I know who it is. You got to tell me off camera, okay?
Yes, I will
want to know
tell
who
you
this
off
person is.
camera for sure.
I want to know.
Yes.
Ellie, I want to ask you one last question. How often do you think to yourself, my goodness, had Steve and Mary not come to get me, what would my life be like now?
Yes, I think about that a lot still. I thought about it a lot when I was younger. And it's unimaginable. I don't know what would happen to me. And I think that just makes me so thankful to my parents, because I wouldn't have my brothers and sisters. I wouldn't have the opportunities I have. I wouldn't even live in the house I have. So
You wouldn't be living on Manitoulin Island,
no, I wouldn't
that's
be
for
living
sure.
on Manitoulin Island. So I think when I think about it, I'm just filled with so much gratitude that my parents did that for me. And yeah, I try to think about what would happen if I wasn't adopted, but I don't get very far. So
Well, look, we wish you all the luck in the world. You have such a talent. I mean, to have the chance to sit there 2 feet away from you and listen to the power of that voice was really very special. So, Mary, thank you for coming here today. Ellie,
thank you.
keep on going, kid.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
He's just finished a 5-week national tour in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and 6 stops around the province of Ontario, including Toronto's Massey Hall. His latest album is called Dear Jane, which he started writing and recording before COVID, but couldn't finish until after the pandemic had done its worst. There's definitely a story there. So let's get into it with Devin Cuddy. Devin, it's great to have you in that chair. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Excellent. Just great. I want to start with where that introduction left off. What happened to your songwriting abilities during COVID, which started just about 5 years ago?
I sort of realized that being alone at home was not a great source of inspiration for me. I think a lot of songwriters were able to sort of woodshed themselves, lock the door and do that. But I realized that I draw a lot of inspiration from doing the job of being a musician, traveling, meeting people, hearing people's stories, whether they're interesting or not. And so there was a little, I guess, writer's block as a result of that.
Did you worry that you were not going to get it back?
Yeah, of course. A little bit. I mean, I think because of the whole, what was sort of going on in the whole world, that you felt you're in some suspended state anyway. So it came out in small pieces eventually.
How did that happen?
With the aid of television, I was watching, the one song that I got out of it that was usable, I was watching MASH, and I sort of powering through it as quickly as I could. And, you know, you use those stories to draw inspiration from television, film, and stuff like that. That was sort of what drew me back out of it until we could go out into the world again and experience.
How did watching a TV show that's 4 decades in the rearview mirror about a war in Korea, which is funny, how did that help you find your your voice to write again?
I was thinking about some of the themes and One of them was the song Dear Jane, so it was about Dear Jane and Dear John letters. And those are letters from the home front to service members on the front saying that their spouse is leaving them while they're serving their country. So happy thoughts. But, and I don't know, it just started coming out. And I sat at the piano and wrote it. It's not about MASH necessarily, but you take things that you hear or see or are part of the storylines and to sort of expand on that. Songwriting is like that in a lot of ways in general, things that you experience in life, and so.
I can't think of a better segue to hearing this song, Dear Jane.
I feel like I set it up.
You absolutely did, and it was all accidental, but well done. Would you mind favoring us with
Absolutely.
Dear Jane right now?
Sure.
And you normally play this on the keyboard.
I normally play everything on the piano, so this will be different.
You got a beautiful guitar there with you, so.
I do. I on my very early days, I wrote a lot of songs on guitar, but I haven't been doing that so much.
Here's Dear Jane.
Let's do it.
Oh, dear Jane, I hope you get this note. Wish we could do this on the phone. There's a line through every word I wrote. Tries to say I feel alone. I know you went out there to do your part. When you left, I should have known. Now here's what I should have said from the start. I won't be there when you get home. Oh, dear Jane, it's true, I loved you so. But it's been so long since that time. Not that I don't love you anymore. Just I'm moving down the line. Oh, dear Jane, I know that you've been brave. I can't imagine what you've seen. They just keep coming wave after wave. Then go back to where they've been. Oh, dear Jane, you'll find somebody new. You never like to be outshone. But when this war it is all done and through, I won't be there when you get home. No, I won't be there when you get home. Oh, dear Jane, farewell for now.
Oh, Devin, that's beautiful. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. I have so many questions emerging from that. First of all, I think you've already answered this, but let's just confirm. Jane is not a specific person that you're speaking to here, is she?
Well, yes and no. I think in my mind, I was just using that Dear Jane as sort of the name of the type of letter, but I think it became the name of the person that is being written to,
And
just through the structure.
Do you want to tell us who that is?
It's not anybody, really. I mean, I don't, again, it was sort of birthed out of MASH, so maybe it's Hot Lips Houlihan, I don't know.
I suspect probably not, but okay. Another question. I mean, there's a lyric in there about, sorry, I'm not going to be in touch anymore because I'm moving down the line. Mm-hmm. Certainly makes it sound like she's quite disposable and he's about to move on to his next conquest. Is that what you meant to imply?
No, not necessarily. I think it's just a sort of an old cowboy line, moving on down the line. So I'm not sure that I meant it to carry too much weight. It was just sort of just one of those lines that every songwriter wants to say who likes country music at some point.
Right. When you speak, you have this very soft, raspy voice. But when you sing, and I'm a meter away from you here, you really boom, you really project. Do you know that you do those two things very differently?
I have been told by many sound people that that is the case. I was never a traditionally trained singer, so I've spent a lot of time developing it on my own. I did piano through all of the traditional sort of avenues, went to university for it and everything. So I just sort of taught myself, and singing loud makes it a little easier to hit the notes for me. So
got it.
Survival.
Do you know that when you sing, your eyes are closed almost all the time?
I do. I find the world to be distracting when I'm singing, and especially at shows, you'll start looking at things and you lose your way, and it has happened to me enough times that I close my eyes. I also find it easier to hear and focus on the sounds that you're making. So it is, again, just a habit that I developed. And yeah, some people want me to open my eyes, but I will lose my way. Sometimes you got to look at your hands, though. That is the one thing that you do.
Yeah, I know. You're obviously not looking at to make sure your fingers are in the right place on the strings.
Practice, I guess.
You know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have to tell you this. Taylor Swift's made a very good living putting her kishkas out there on the table for everybody to see. How revealing of your own whatever's in your heart do you want your music to be?
Yeah, that's something you think about a lot, I think, as an artist, especially if you sing too much and too obviously about the people around you, then people can get hurt or upset. I wrote a lot from the third person right at the beginning, when I started songwriting. It was the way that I wanted to write. It was also a style that I was interested in. And my very favorite songwriter, whose name is Randy Newman, writes a lot in the third person and speaks about capturing the voice of somebody else and the challenge of that as a songwriter. And I was always intrigued by that. Over the years, small things from my life have snuck in to the songs, but I generally don't write as myself.
Randy Newman is an interesting choice because Randy Newman, how do I put this delicately, does not have a good voice. You have a good voice. Why would he be your inspiration?
I love his piano playing and his songwriting, especially stuff like from the pre-movie days.
Short People?
That one's not bad. I played that one in the past. So you get some looks when you play that song. Well, he's got a lot of songs like that. But yeah, of that era. And I was very drawn to the third person thing. And I think he has an amazing ability to write something very sweet and very tender. And then the following track is hilarious and silly. And I've always admired that. And obviously as a piano player, he drew from a lot of classical and stuff like that. And that was my interest growing up, jazz and things like that. And turning that into more mainstream country rock stuff.
That maybe helps answer the next question, which was how you characterize your sound. Because it's not quite New Orleans, and it's not quite country.
Yeah,
but all that's in there.
I know. Well, we've been told we're allowed to use this term roots, which is an incredible umbrella term that you can just describe anything that draws from. But country blues, country rock, like where, I don't know, Hank Williams and Ray Charles cross over, wherever that is.
Nice.
That's the angle I try to run.
Now, apologies for the obvious question here, which I suspect you've had before, but you grew up in Jim Cuddy's home.
I did.
Greg Keeler, his Blue Rodeo pal, produced one of your albums. So I have to assume that there's a significant amount of influence of those two guys in your work. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it was not on purpose, there would be the soundtrack of my life, and every music that I discovered and stuff that I liked is from the CD collection at the time that my dad had, and I was obviously exposed to lots of great music and inspired by them and their friends, and I grew up in a really very cool environment, and it was pretty natural to want to follow in that footsteps and fall into that world.
When Justin Trudeau was your age, he got a lot of questions about the advantages and disadvantages of having Trudeau as a last name. So I guess I want to ask you the same kind of question, which is, are there advantages and disadvantages to having Cuddy as a last name?
Well, there's an endless well of advantages for sure. I haven't really found any barriers or problems. I mean, you know, anything to do with being the son of, I'm completely fine with. I mean, that would be such an uphill battle if you were fighting against it. And so we do a lot of playing together, and I have had nothing but doors open as a result of it, and I'm very grateful and very lucky to have that.
Well, one of the doors that opened was the last time I saw you perform, and that was Massey Hall, where you had a lot of friends and a lot of family there. When I asked you after the show what you thought about the experience of playing Massey Hall, which is obviously one of the finest places in this country to play, you kind of turned white as a ghost for a second there. I would have thought it would be an unambiguously good thing. Do you remember what you told me?
I am a little worried now, but no, I don't.
Well, you said something like the fact, I look out in the audience, I see all my friends and family, and I'm a bit petrified that I'm going to screw up. You know.
Oh, yeah. Hometown shows are always nerve-wracking, and a hometown show at something as hallowed as the Massey Hall is the full experience. But you know, it's always exciting to be in that place. And I love watching shows, and obviously playing is a privilege at that place. But hometown shows are funny, especially when you're doing a tour. You get into a routine of things, and there are very seldom are there a lot of people that you know around. And then the hometown show happens, and everybody is there, which is great. But it's very different. It shakes your routine a bit. And then obviously you see your family and everybody in the audience, and it's like, yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
Well, you were on stage for some of it with your dad.
That's why I close my eyes.
Yeah, I can understand. You're on stage for some of it with your dad, but your mom was in the audience. And I know everybody asks you what the influence your father. I want to find out. Your mom is an actress. Mm-hmm. I'd like to find out what her influence was on your performing abilities. Well,
I'm not an overly theatrical person, so I'm not sure I got that from her. But you know,
I'm going to disagree with you.
She raised us.
I'm going to disagree with you. Do you see No, you don't, because your eyes are closed. You should see how expressive your face is when you sing. That's a performance skill. And I know, okay, maybe you got some of it from your dad, but I'm willing to bet.
Oh, for sure.
You got a lot of it from your mom too.
I'm sure that is very much from my mother. I mean, you know, we used to run lines with her, and we were very involved in her life. So she's a big part of everything that I do.
Well, speaking about on stage with your dad, here is you. It's kind of funny to watch you grow up in public, you know? Because we're going to show a clip of you 12 years ago on stage with Blue Rodeo, and you look and sound a little bit different. And I want to talk about that when we come back. Sheldon, if you would, let's roll that clip.
I used to think I knew what I was fighting for. No, I don't think that anymore.
And Greg Keeler says at the end of that piece, he says, that song has never sounded so good as it did that day in that show. What's the biggest difference between that guy and the guy I saw in Massey Hall last month?
Well, you develop a confidence on stage for sure that comes with time and experience. And, you know, I was probably pretty green back then. As I was just saying, same hair but younger face, right?
How about in the voice? Different voice?
You know, I have sometimes a hard time analyzing, listening to yourself. But yes, I would assume my voice is stronger now, or I hope.
It's stronger and richer, and there's more sandpaper there.
Yeah, I was definitely, I mean, that would have been, either I would have just made my first record or just before it. So I was new to it. I've done a lot of stage hours since then.
Let me ask you just finally, you know, defining success in your business is hard because so few participants get to experience it, right? It is a very tough road that you are going on. So let me just ask you directly, what will constitute for you a successful career in music?
Well, for me and many musicians, it's sort of the only thing that you can and want to do. And you need to, performing is something that you feel you need to do in order to feel alive in many ways. So for me, success is just being able to do it as a job. Make just enough money to live and not have another job. And I love to travel, so traveling is, I would consider that to be success. And there's an amazing thrill when you look out in a crowd and somebody's singing along to one of your songs. And that, to me, is the number one thing. So
You back on the road in the new year?
we will be back on the road in the new year, yes. East and west and everywhere. Smaller chunks this time.
Got it. This guy's a lot of fun to watch play, I gotta say. So if you get a chance to go see Devin Cuddy on the road somewhere around Ontario or Canada, do so. Devin, thanks a lot for coming in today. This was a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. And that is the agenda for Thursday, December 19th, 2024. Tomorrow on the program, we meet with a man from Thornhill, Ontario, who tried to negotiate peace with Syria's former dictator Bashar al-Assad in a story that's never before been made public. Hope you'll join us for that. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow on the agenda, you walk into the palace in Damascus where President Assad lives. And what do you see?
I see at the very end of a long hallway, I see a tall man standing and waiting for me. And I couldn't believe it. I had to pinch myself that this was really happening. And there he was, the president of Syria, and said to me, "Welcome to Syria, Moshe. May I call you Moshe?"
That's tomorrow on the agenda.